Welcome to Fightnomics, where we answer the big questions in mixed martial arts with a little bit of science and a whole lot of numbers. This week, we're taking a closer look at UFC 171. Georges St. Pierre maintained a presence in the UFC welterweight title picture for a decade and reigned supreme for most of that time. But with the former champ taking time away from the sport, the doors are now open for a new undisputed welterweight champion in a division that just got really interesting. With 6 highly ranked welterweights competing this weekend, we're going to get some immediate clarity on the post-GSP welterweight era. Last month at UFC 170, we saw 4 finishes on the main card, something you saw coming if you watched my preview video. UFC 171 also has some highlight reel potential, and chances are some left-handed fighters will be delivering them. In fact, with at least 11 southpaw stance fighters competing on the entire UFC 171 card, it's the most unorthodox card in UFC history. It's almost like using a southpaw stance might carry some sort of advantage in MMA, but if you read the Fightnomics book, you already know the answer to that. As always, I'll be dropping key stats all week on Twitter and my Uber Tales of the Tape on Fight Night to help you understand this weekend's matchups. We'll start off the main card with the 2 biggest competitors of the evening, who are both coming off impressive first-round knockout victories. For those who like pay-per-view broadcasts to start with a bang, these 2 guys shouldn't let you down. Both fighters land their power strikes with high accuracy and are fully capable of dropping opponents. And both fighters are also aggressive in pushing forward on their feet, which usually means more action in the fight. Defensively, neither fighter is especially evasive, meaning we should expect some standing and trading while on their feet, as well as some powerful strikes to land on target. Though we don't have a lot of data on Krylov, we do know that OSP has some decent grappling skills should the fight hit the mat. In his first 2 fights, Krylov was unable to defend any takedowns. If that's where this fight heads, expect OSP to be the one working the ground and pound. But out of the gates, they should stand and bang, and given the hints in the stats, don't blink. In a pairing of the 2 oldest fighters on the card, it's also the first matchup of ranked fighters in the suddenly crowded welterweight title picture. It's also a stylistic contrast in that Jake Shields has excelled in fights when he's been able to get his opponent to the ground, while Hector Lombard has made a career of knocking opponents out. When there's a grappler versus power striker matchup, the key battleground is often in the takedown game. While Shields attempts frequent takedowns, he doesn't necessarily land them with high success rate. Meanwhile, as a former Olympian in judo, Lombard has demonstrated solid takedown defense to date, which is only boosted by his move down to the welterweight division. If Shields fails to get the takedown, his usual style of coming forward with a high-volume attack might work against him, so expect some hesitancy on his feet. Lombard has proven to be very accurate with his strikes, and he's definitely not lacking in power. The longer it stays on their feet, the more it favors the Cuban southpaw. It's old school versus new school in the pivot matchup of the main card. Myles is 7 years younger than his opponent and enters the matchup better equipped to survive a brawl given his youth and unblemished fight history. Meanwhile, Sanchez is a contender for the last man standing from the very first season of The Ultimate Fighter in 2005, which also means he's endured some hard battles during the 9 years since. Those fights, including 7 Fight of the Night performances, ties him with Frankie Edgar for the most in UFC history, several of which also took unofficial Fight of the Year honors. That is a lot of action from one guy, but it does come at a cost. Offensively, these 2 fighters have similar pace and similar accuracy, but defensively, it's a different story. Jury has proven to be very hard to hit, while Sanchez has made a history of taking more strikes than he gives out. The odds makers are suggesting that the new blood, Myles Jury, is expected to catapult his way into the lightweight rankings. But getting past Diego Sanchez may require another shootout, the kind that keeps open the chance for a haymaker from Sanchez. Sanchez doesn't mess around with many jabs, he swings for the fences, another reason that he is both dangerous but also susceptible to patient and technical opponents. In the co-main event matchup that has implications for the next welterweight title fight, former UFC interim champion Carlos Condit faces former Strikeforce contender Tyron Woodley. Here's another matchup that contrasts the skills and fighting styles of each fighter. While standing, Condit is a high-volume striker and attacks with a diverse mix of kicks and combinations, but suffers a trade-off with lower head-striking accuracy. Meanwhile, Woodley is traditionally a more reserved striker in terms of volume, but one who is very accurate and powerful. In fact, Punch for punch, Woodley is the more powerful striker of any welterweight competing on the card, including heavy hitters like Lombard, Hendricks, and Lawler. And one reason Woodley can land those bombs is his sound wrestling base, which equates to 94% takedown defense, another metric where Woodley is tops on the night. But Condit has been dangerous all over the cage, especially in top control on the ground. He advances position very aggressively and has logged 17 submission attempts, more than any other fighter on the card. He's also dangerous with his strikes, earning 4 finishes by TKO since coming to the UFC. But given all the powerful welterweights on the card, we have to keep things in perspective. Woodley is the harder hitter. We just haven't seen as much of his range around the cage as we have from Condit, who remains the more proven contender. With a win, either fighter could be in line for a title shot, meaning they will be very interested in the final fight of the card. It's a fitting finale for this card, as both fighters in the main event will come out southpaw, and both fighters have similar skills that are in sharp contrast to the previous champion. While recent title fights at welterweight have been strategic chess matches, we now have a pairing of two powerful fighters who like to stand and trade, and who are very good at doing it. With 17 combined knockdowns in the UFC and Strikeforce careers, it's Lawler who has the higher knockdown rate, but Hendricks who has the better striking accuracy. Defensively, Lawler is better at avoiding getting hit, but is also the only one of the two to have been knocked out himself. The one metric that suggests the stand-up game might take some time to develop is that both fighters tend to be outpaced by opponents or rely on counter-striking, meaning that there may be some staring and settling before the leather starts flying. This effect is magnified by the fact that both fighters will stand southpaw, which generally leads to more hesitation. Hendricks is much more likely to use takedowns, of which he lands about half. Although Lawler's takedown defense is just above average, part of that metric is based on fights in a larger weight class against superior grapplers. Neither fighter uses submissions as a key part of their attack, but getting top control on the ground could be very important in securing rounds in the cards. Physically, Lawler will have a substantial reach advantage, although Hendricks has made a career of overcoming range with his one-punch knockout power. All the trade-offs on either side of the stat line here make this an intriguing matchup that looks a lot closer on paper than the current market odds. The public pegs Hendricks' chances to win at over 80%, but given the power striking abilities of Lawler, his range advantage, deep experience, and the durability of both fighters, this fight could be more closely contested than the odds suggest, and could require the championship rounds to determine a winner. Should the fight go to the deeper waters, the wrestling base and conditioning of Hendricks could be the difference in the final rounds. I do expect the fight to take some time to develop before the welterweight title picture becomes any more clear. That does it for this week. If you like some stats mixed in with your MMA, be sure to share this video and check out the book Fightnomics, available now in digital and print on Amazon.com. As always, follow Fightnomics on Twitter for the latest and deepest stats available on MMA, and to see my uber tale of the tape every fight night. Thanks for watching.